Hello and welcome to today's video. My name is David and we are going to cover Squarespace Analytics. I have worked with websites that just launched all the way to sites that have hundreds and thousands of views each and every month. The data is so important to understand even if you're just starting out on Squarespace. So in this video, we are going to cover 3 key topics for Squarespace Analytics. The first one is going to be understanding the terminology. If you're new to website analytics, the terminology may be foreign to you. So we're going to go through a few definitions. Part 2, we're going to go through what to look for. Data tells a story, and there are 4 or 5 things that I really highlight and focus while I'm looking at the data. And part 3 will be specific advice. So if you are an e-commerce shop on Squarespace, or you are a blogger on Squarespace, or you create content on Squarespace, those can fall in the same category. And then if you're a consultant, or if you have a portfolio, any of those types of sites on Squarespace, I'm going to cover how to optimize specifically, looking at the tools that I offer in part 2 for your website. All of this is with a focus on how to grow, optimize, and scale your business via your website, and specifically your analytics. So let's dive in. Part 1, understanding terminology. There are a few key things that you want to understand, and I'm going to link this page in the description if you want to access it so you can review it in more depth, but there are a few key things to keep in mind. One of them is going to be bounce rate. So what is a bounce rate? What does that even mean? A bounce rate is basically this. If I go and visit your website, whatever page I start on, if I leave your site without visiting any other pages, that counts towards the bounce rate. So the bounce rate basically means I go to your site, whatever page I land on, I leave, and that's all I experience on your website. The higher the number is, in some cases is good, and in some cases is bad. If you are a blogger, you definitely want a very low bounce rate. Bounce rate basically means that somebody visits your site, they probably didn't find what they were looking for and left. But if you're a consultant, bounce rate could be great if it's high, because that means they got to your site, they landed on a page, they found what they wanted, they filled out a form, made a booking, whatever that may be, and left. That is bounce rate. The next one is conversion rate. Conversion is so important. That means somebody has taken action on your website. A long time ago, websites used to be very informational. Today, they are very directional. You give people a focus on what to do on your website. They have full autonomy to do whatever they want, but a conversion is a great way to track that. So if you're e-commerce, you're tracking sales. If you're a consultant, you're tracking people filling out a form or booking a meeting with you. But understanding conversion rate within Squarespace, you have a few options. You have sales by product, you have sales in general, and then you have form and button submissions. Now, this is a little bit limited to what Squarespace offers only. So if you're using third-party tools, having something like Google Analytics set up and using conversion tracking in there is really good. But basically, this is what conversion tracking is. Let's say 100 people land on your site and 3 of them fill out a form. Well, you have a 3% conversion rate. It's the amount of people who take action on your website. Okay, so direct. When we talk about traffic sources, you may get traffic from an organic search. Somebody goes to Google, types something in, lands on your website. So when we talk about direct, we're talking about traffic sources. So this one's important to know because if someone goes to Google, types in something, lands on your website, that is considered organic. But if someone goes to their browser and types in your URL specifically, that is direct traffic. So that's the difference there. It could also be social. It could also be ads. There are a ton of places traffic could come from, but direct traffic means they typed in your URL in their browser and ended up on your website. Finally, let's talk about unique views and unique visitors. When they use the word unique, it separates it from different types of data. Let me give you an example. If I visit your website today, and then I visit it tomorrow, and then I visit it the next day, and in each of those visits, I look at, let's just say 10 pages. So I look at 30 pages over the course of 3 days. Technically, you have 30 page views, but for unique visitors, it's only 1 for those 30 page views. And so unique, when they put unique in front of it, it basically, as it says here, is an estimate of the total number of actual visitors that reach your site in the set time frame. The separation here is important to understand because that's the actual number of people. You may have 10,000 page views with 5,000 unique visitors. Typically, page views is always a lot higher than visitors. So those are a few keywords to keep in mind while you are looking at analytics. Part 2, let's talk about what to look for. there are 4 key things I keep in mind with questions and answers as I go through the data. First one, I'm going to start in traffic, and we're going to look at device preference and browser preference. It's important just to keep this in mind in the back of your head as you go through the data. So here, right now, what we're really looking at is top devices and top browsers. The reason this is important is you want to do 3 things based on this. Number 1, make sure your design is amazing for the user experience. So you can see here, desktop is getting a majority of the traffic. And so 87% of the total traffic year to date. With that in mind, I want to make sure the desktop experience is amazing. On top of that, here you'll see top browser by visitor. Again, huge differential. Chrome is the number 1 used tool to access the website, most likely on desktop. So with those 2 things, I know I want to make sure my user experience has 3 things. The first one, just mentioned, is making sure the design is amazing for that type of experience. Obviously, I don't neglect the other ones, but I just want to make sure that is amazing. Number 2, if mobile is the predominant device used, you want to ensure that your browser experience on Safari, Chrome, and also on social is really good. I've noticed that a lot of e-commerce websites that run ads on Instagram and Facebook have a horrible user experience inside social because sometimes a pop-up shows up and it fills the screen, and the way that the in-app browser works for, say, Instagram or Facebook or other apps, it hides the close button. So you almost get stuck on their website or on a page that you can't access the actual content you want to visit. So you really want to use your website the way people use it. So with whatever device or browser they are using. And that's number 3. Use the site the same way. Experience it, check it. And if you have customizations and things like that, this is really important because it helps you understand how the user is experiencing your website. It may look great on desktop, but as soon as you go to mobile, the little icon for, let's say, a chat feature in the bottom right with the cookie banner and a pop-up are all bundling on top of each other and making the user experience really poor. You want to check into that and make sure that whatever you're optimizing for is around device and browser. For number 2, for what to look for, we're going to talk about growth and where it comes from. So right now I'm on traffic sources. You'll see here. And with that, I'm looking at year to date. So I'm looking over the last 9 months. Where have we grown the most? So this top one is all sources. So keep that in mind. This line here is direct. So that means somebody types in the URL directly in the browser and goes to the site. Next one up is search. And then you have a few more down here. You could see all these options here. You could actually click on these and hide some of them if you want. So if this makes your user experience better, you can easily do that. But where is growth happening at the moment? Well, you could see it's happening direct, which is awesome, and also with search. So at this point, I may want to double down on search, organic results, SEO. If paid social is working really well, I could double down on that. If email is working really well, I could double down on that. Or if referrals, I could double down on that. What's also important to keep in mind here is you could look for things to cut that may be taking up valuable space or resources for you and your team. Let's say email really isn't working well, but you're sending out an email and you're putting a lot of effort into it. Well, now you know that, now you could look at the data and see if it's actually producing a result. So once you're down here, you could look for things to cut. If you're doing paid ads and you're seeing that they're not producing results, because you could see how many visitors you got, how much revenue that produced, how many orders came in, and you could look at the conversion rate. Another key aspect of growth is going to be going to site content. Okay, this is really important, especially if you're doing over the past 30 days or last month or this month or whatever data you're looking at that's a closer time frame. This is important because it really shows you what's valuable to the user. The top 5 or 6 pages here are what most people are spending their time on. So here you can get a lot of information. Number 1 is maybe you have a page here. Let's say, for instance, it's the second page and it's your about page and it gets a lot of traffic. Well, what you can do, let's say, for example, it's not in your main navigation. Well, you may want to add it to your main navigation. Further, something to consider is, let's say you have a top 5 pages here. Let's just say these pages are crushing it and everything else is kind of like, not that useful. Well, this could be your main navigation, and anything else that you might have in your main navigation right now, you could throw down in the footer of your site. So this helps you understand, what are people actually getting value from? Maybe one of these is a blog post, and we'll talk about this more with specific advice in part 3, but just for now, let's just say one of these is a blog post. Well, you might want to give people very easy access to get to that blog post. So this data here for site content really allows you to know what's working and making sure it's as easy as possible to access. And then there might be things you did that you like, but people don't necessarily find valuable, that you could hide or throw somewhere else. So this gives you clear data on what to double down on and also what to cut. Final note here, let's say something you really want to sell on your site is way down here or just really far down on the list. If that's the case, it's not getting traffic, well, you could start to examine that. So if the outcome of your site, the conversion goal you have, is not happening, you could start to examine what may be getting in the way. Are people spending a lot of time on other pages that are not relevant to the final conversion goal? Maybe they don't have easy access to what the conversion goal is. Maybe it's a little bit hidden. This really helps you analyze that, take a look, and figure out what the best tactic is so you can optimize your website. What to look for. Number 3. Let's take a look at overall search performance. Now, if this is not on, you could easily set it up with Google Search Console and a Gmail account in 2 clicks. So just click through. There will be a button right at dead center on this page. But once you do that, you'll start to pull data that looks just like this. So there are 2 things I look for here, especially if you are a blogger or you create content. This is really useful. So for search keywords, what keywords are bringing us a lot of traffic versus what keywords do we want to bring us a lot of traffic that are not? So let's say you're looking at the data and you're analyzing these 3-4 links at the top here, and you're most likely one of them is your brand name, maybe one of them is your name, another one may be a very unique keyword. So you're looking at the data and you see here that you're getting traffic for this. This is great. You could optimize it by doubling down, creating more content just like it, developing that content further. Let's say people end up on this page a lot. Let's say this is your services page and it's talking about one of your 4 services. Well, at the very bottom of the page, you can add links to your other 3 services, because if most of your visitors are landing on this page, you want to make the page as useful as possible. It's almost like your introduction to your website. And so adding content or different sections and things like that, not expecting the user to have visited every page on your website, and summarizing other parts of your website on this specific page may be useful, especially, let's say, testimonials or other services or other products. That's why having a similar product section is so important if you have e-commerce or more blog posts on a specific blog post, because it helps guide the user in their experience so they get valuable content from your site. You could double down on keywords that are really working, but also look for the keywords that you're not showing up for. Let's say there are a few keywords that you really want to show up for. Well, now you can create blog content around those keywords so that over time you could start to double down on those keywords as well. And just one final note here, you can make sure that any of these pages have a clear call to action. Because let's just say, for example, a lot of people are ending up on this page, but maybe there's a high bounce rate, or you're not getting the result you want. You're not getting sales, you're not getting forms filled out, or people contacting you, or whatever that may be. Well, you can now look at the page and see, is there a clear call to action here that you could reference or that you could pull up? Oh, and actually one final note, this one I think is really important here. You'll see here that we have a very high impression count. Impression means the number of times it showed up in someone's search results versus the number of actual clicks. So you'll see here, click rate is 60%. This is 1.4. Now, in reality, a 3% click-through rate for, let's say, Google Ads is very normal. But here in this case, this may be something I want to optimize for. If it's valuable content for me, if the keyword's valuable for me, way over here, I will want to optimize this content further so that it shows up higher in search results. You can see here we're averaging the 6th position, but maybe on the 2nd or 3rd, that could be a really valuable spot for us. Okay, so if you're e-commerce, first thing I'll say is go to sales by product. When you come to sales by product, what I would recommend looking at is look at the data of what products are being sold versus the number of views they are getting. So you'll see here, this is a 7% conversion rate, which is pretty good. And you'll see here, this conversion rate is at almost 11%. So you could take a look here and see what you could do to optimize. Maybe this one's a little bit low. You want to optimize it? Well, you could add more content to that page, reorganize it, change the verbiage, work on the copy, all of that. You can make adjustments, add images, change the images, see if there's anything you could do to optimize those specific products. Following, I would go back to site content and I would focus in here. I actually love this part of Squarespace Analytics because site content just really shows you where are people getting value versus where I think they're getting value. So these top pages here, if I am trying to sell a product or a service or a downloadable or have people book a consultation, whatever that is, but in this case for e-commerce, if I'm trying to sell a product, this will tell me how people are accessing the site, where they're going, where they're ending up, and go from there. Most likely, main page up here is going to be your home page. Following might be an about page or a shop page or something like that. But if your shop page is really down low on the list, that may be a good signal that people are not getting to your products. Following, if your favorite products or the products you want to sell the most are way too far down on the list, you may want to look at how to optimize that. Should we add it to one of these top pages here? Should it be on the home page, front and center, or right below the fold? Things like that are really important to consider as you're going through your site. And now I'm going to stay here and let's talk about if you are a blogger or you create a lot of content or you just have a blog in general. This page is so valuable because you'll be able to see what content is really valuable for people, and you want to make that as easily accessible as possible. So let's say this third one here is a blog post that gets a ton of traffic, but you wrote it a year and a half ago. How do people access that post? Do they have to go into your blog and go back to get to that page? Most likely, the reality is they're probably going to Google, searching, and then showing up on your site. But if they ever go back to your site, it's a little bit difficult for them to find that post again. So you want to make it accessible and easy. The way to do this is you may have a folder where you link to that specific blog post. You may have a footer where you link to that specific blog post, or you may have a section on your homepage or any page that you link to that specific blog post. Whatever it may be, you want to make it easily accessible. Next, for bloggers, SEO is so vital. So you could almost do the same thing here that we just talked about on the site content tab. Here, you could walk through what is working, what keywords are people searching, and what blog post is showing up. One thing I always like to think about with SEO is that Google ranks pages, not domains. Yes, there's domain authority and there's other rules and things, so don't go crazy about this. But one thing to consider is sometimes your site isn't what shows up for a specific search, but a blog post. It's not your homepage, but a blog post. So you may want to go to those posts, adjust them, add to them. You may want to create new blog content for words you want to show up for that you're not showing up for, all of that. Okay, specific advice for consultants. On the site content page, I'm telling you, I love this page. For this page, look at page performance. So look at the number of visitors versus the amount of time on the page versus the bounce rate. We talked earlier, what's the bounce rate? Bounce rate is somebody goes to your page, they find what they're looking for and they exit, or they land on your page, they don't find what they're looking for and they exit. In the first case, that's great. In the second case, that's not so good. So you want to look at the data here and see, is this a blog post? Well, if it is, are they spending quality time on the page? Also, what's the bounce rate? These numbers help you understand where things are at. So if you're a consultant and you have 4 services pages and let's say this is your services page, well, you'll see people are spending just about 3 minutes here and the bounce rate is pretty high. Well, what you can consider if you have a form here is people are filling out the form. they're spending a quality time on the page, and they're filling out a form. By the way, 3 minutes is a long time in the internet world. So spending 3 minutes on a website page is truly a long time. So this is important to keep in mind as you go through. Compare these numbers. There's no specific formula, but just consider what type of content is the actual page. How many views is it getting? How much time are they spending on the page? Should they be spending 2 minutes? Maybe they should only be there for a few seconds and go to a different page. And is the bounce rate high or low? It just depends on what type of content it is, but you could take a look at those numbers. And finally, for consultants, what I would say to keep in mind is, how did the user enter and exit your website? So if you go to search keywords, you'll be able to find how a lot of people entered your site, especially from organic. If you go to site content, you're going to see which pages people land on the most. This allows you to understand, where did people come from? Then you could go in here and look at the exit rate, and you could organize this page by the exit rate so you can see where people are exiting. And so we post a lot of blog posts, so there's just a lot of other stuff here. This page, people spend about 6 minutes on this page. The bounce rate is pretty high, but they are spending a lot of time on the page. And then the exit rate is pretty high. So to me, that tells me the people who come to this page find what they're looking for. Overall, what I would say for consultants as well, you will want to blog. I think every website I can say this for, but blogging is so valuable. And it's so critical for your overall experience and people spending time on your site, and also building up a reputation with Google that you are an authority on a topic or a subject or a service, whatever that may be. Finally, let's talk about if you have a portfolio. Site content is the master place to be. So for site content, what I would do, I've talked about before, but just to emphasize it for a portfolio, is whatever these top pages are, you want to make sure they're easily accessible in your main navigation and or your footer. If you have pages in your main navigation that don't show up here, you may want to drop them in the footer. That just means they're not as important, not as useful. Following, let's just say this page here is one of your projects and people absolutely love visiting this project. Well, you may want to make it very easily accessible by making it one of your first projects on your homepage. Maybe let's say you have 6 or 7 case studies on your homepage. Make sure it's the top one. That means if someone comes to your site and they're considering you for a project or to hire you, and this project gets the most love, make it easily accessible. If you have another project that you personally love so much, but it's really not getting a lot of traffic, you'd probably want to move it down on the list. So maybe you might have it as the top option and you may move it down on the list. Now, at the end of the day, if you could do whatever you want, but the data helps you understand what people are finding useful, and making it more useful, doubling down on it, or cutting is really valuable. So there are additional resources for you. I have a blog post that covers everything we discussed today and any new updates that I've learned since this video has been published. At the same time, we have other resources as well for you. So check the links down below in the description, and thank you for watching. Hey, thank you for watching this video. If you got value from this video, hit that like button. When you hit that like button, it tells the YouTube algorithm some important information, but it also lets me know that you got value from this video. And if you did get value from this video and you want more content just like this, consider subscribing. We publish new videos every single week. Friday at 1 p.m. we post a new video, if not multiple videos throughout the week. If you have any questions, drop a comment below, but I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.